And we're talking about international players too. Like Zubac, I thought he was going to go first round too. I was surprised that he didn't.
Yeah,
but let's
definitely.
let's transition over to that international one and done discussion real quick, because we saw 8 players who literally were just straight out of international, not counting people who came overseas to play college for a year and then went into the draft. Guys that were strictly just first round players that were taken internationally. There was 8 players that were strictly taken internationally, but there's 15 who come from an international descent. So basically half of the first round were international descent. So we kind of, I mean, are we seeing the end of the one and done? Do you think the one and done should end? Adam Silver's trying to put to his next CBA that the CBA should kind of get rid of the one and done rule. What are your thoughts on the one and done rule, and what should the NBA and NCAA do?
Here's what the rule should be. And this is not something for, like, I'm not thinking just college in mind. Mm-hmm. The NBA should say, to qualify for the NBA draft, 20. That's the age gap. Because if you're going to go to college, you get 3 years of college. Do you have to go to college? No, go play in China. If you want to make some money, go play in China. But you're still developing for those 3 years. Whether you decide college is the way for you, if you decide the EuroLeague is for you,
really.
If you're if you're coming out at 18, okay, 2021, I put 20 down.
Are you saying
2 or 3 years?
Are you saying 2 years out of high school?
Yeah.
So you're saying
just 2 years from high school.
So sophomore graduation. Out of. So say we're talking like you have to be a sophomore to come out of the draft, if at least if we're talking college.
See, that's the thing. I don't think it should be based off of class, because what if I go over to the EuroLeague? I think it's got to be based off of age.
I'm saying 2 years out of high school.
2 years post-graduation of high school. That's the line.
That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say it is just 20 years old.
But it's not 20 for everybody, though.
And then, that's the way I would phrase it. It's 20.
So I think maybe if
I would say 20. That's what I would do. Because the one thing you also have to think about is, from the maturity standpoint, I know that people mature quicker than others, but if you've been out of high school for 2 years, but you're technically 19, I'd rather have just flat off 20. You have to be at least 20 to go into the NBA draft.
But at the same time, that feels like the NBA is slapping themselves on the wrist and going, we don't want these phenomenal athletes in the league yet. And
but really, like, the one thing we keep looking at is, and I'm going to use Chris as an example, and he's a guy where the biggest knock, he's got all these tools, but when he gets into foul trouble, he lets the mind kind of take over, and he's kind of like a loose cannon, and he's raw offensively. Yeah. And that's the reason why maybe the Kings, and I'm not defending it, but I'm saying at 13, they probably were like, hey, you know what? I don't want to take a stab on a kid like a Deonta Davis.
That's not what they're thinking.
Like,
I'll say a little your argument, and then I come back and I'll just say Scal. And they ended up picking up a young guy who, again, 1 year. And I'm saying value-wise, great for them. But at the same time, it's the same guy. It's someone who's young, who just had their first year in college, who definitely was affected by the big spotlight. You know, he underperformed on levels that we all had expectations of him being a top 3 guy coming out in this draft. And he just absolutely shit the bed in college.
Well, and the other thing that the one and done rule is doing is it's basically killing teams that don't hit on that, like, because to be good in the NBA, there's a little bit of luck into it, and you got to hit on those star, like, generational changing athletes. Steph Curry, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, the ones that just transcend.
Kobe Bryant. Oh, wait, no. Kobe was a late pick.
Like,
that's
transcend
right.
the game, but you still have to hit on that pick.
Oh, yeah.
You have to hit on it.
You need to.
The one thing that I think the one and done rule kind of does is it's kind of just flooding the market with just a sure mass of players, to where if I'm a team, like, I'm going to throw out Charlotte. I'm a bad team. I'm mediocre playoff, but I'm picking these guys hoping that they're going to mature, and it's just dud after dud after dud, because maybe
Frank the Tank was not a dud.
I'm not saying Frank
Kemba
the
Walker
Tank
wasn't a dud.
But I'm saying, like, just for those teams, okay, fine. I'll go back to the Charlotte Bobcat days. You happy there? But the way I see it is just, I mean, it handicaps those teams to where it's the fact of, we're not hitting on these players. If they would have stayed in college,
fault. Get a better scout.
If they would have stayed in college or even played more time in the EuroLeague, then they would have developed. And I'm not saying that it's just go to college. I'm saying you can go overseas if you want.
My idea is more of really kind of what the MLB and NHL does, where you can draft a guy and then you get the rights to him, and then once they come out, that's your player. So really, my idea is, first off, there's a lot of moving pieces in this one. So obviously, it's not as simple as we're putting an age gap on here.
Yep.
It's going to be more of players can come out. So it's like a Ben Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
If I think it's kind of more of if he, because Ben Simmons is kind of a weird one because he can play right now. Yep. That's the thing. But I feel like if a player wants to come out and a player likes their draft stock, then they can go out and sign with that team. But say like a guy like Deontay Davis, if he's picked in the second round, he can go back to college and work on his game there instead of wasting his time out on the
So kind
NBA
of like
court.
how the MLB does it?
Yeah, so it's more like if you get drafted by a team, you can choose whether to go play on that team or you can go back to college, like the college that you were at. But then again, it's kind of like,
that's a fundamental flaw with basketball as a whole, though, is there's no
farm system.
There's no farm system.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, I kind of like the idea. We'd need a longer draft, obviously.
Yeah, but then again, it's also like, well, who's going to pay him, NCAA or NBA teams? And then also, NCAA is going to be like, well, this guy's getting paid. So there's a lot of flaws in that one.
They're student athletes. Remember that, Sean. They're
Exactly.
So they're there for the education.
Is it weird? Like, who's going to be paying them? Because I mean, is it just going to be like, all right, this guy's not going to be on his contract until he joins the squad, or are we going to start paying him when he drafted because he's still playing basketball?
The thing I'm going to throw out just really quick about what you said, like, okay, let's say Deontay Davis. I don't like where I'm going. I'm going back to college. Well, I just
I'm
think
not saying. I like
an NBA team. I think of. Okay, well then you fucked, like, that system's kind of fucking NBA teams over, where unless it's going to be, yeah, I'm going back to college, but yeah, we still own your rights, because I think it's going to fuck over the teams too much.
Well, you have to go deeper in the draft, so we'd have to have a third round, maybe a fourth round even.
See, my thing is more of, it's not like, oh, all right, so they picked Deontay Davis at 31 or whatever, and they trade his rights to Memphis. Memphis still owns Deontay Davis, but Deontay Davis goes back for a sophomore year at Michigan State to work on his game and start in college, and then once he says, all right, I'm coming out, it's not like I'm going back into the draft. Just he's on the Grizzlies.
Really?
Yeah, but what if he doesn't, he's like, I don't want to play for the Grizzlies. He's got to wait for those rights to expire.
See, the one thing that no, it's not, the rights don't expire. They drafted him. That's my thing.
No, it's after a certain amount of years, don't the rights kind of just go away?
Well, yeah, then he's going to be what, 25
no, that's what I'm saying.
or 27?
That's the thing. I was looking at it more as like, I fell to the second round. I want to be a first rounder next year. He can't have that because he's still going to be owned by this team.
That's the thing. That's the one move that I like with the NBA, where they gave those guys a chance to go to the combine, work out, and
get projections.
Get projections, and then if they didn't want to come in, they came in. It's Davis's fault that he went in. Well, if Davis didn't want to be
basically his agent and his crew around him told him, you should stick. You should go for it. You should absolutely go for it. Don't stick around college. Go get paid.
All the mock drafts had him going to like the Bulls, the just 15.
They had him
16
15
kind
to 25.
Of underneath.
15 to 25. I mean, is it? I'm not really sure whose really fault it was, but what I'm saying is more of, all right, if I'm looking at it, it's Davis's fault. He had the time to say, I don't want to go into this. I don't like my spot. He could have went back.
It was also his fault by opening his mouth and saying, well, if I would have got more minutes, I would have done. It's like, just shut up and play. Like, that's the way I see that.
That's why I'm saying.
That's why I'm agreeing with you.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but what is, Sean, what's the upside of if they decide to go back to college? I mean, their rights are still owned by the same team.
Well, it's more
you're not making money now.
You're not going to be wasting on the bench. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be getting a contract.
I think it's the
thing.
Problem is there's no farm system for the NBA. The D League is a joke. And until that gets more
because like in baseball, I could be a first-round pick and say, no, I'm going back to college, and get to be redrafted the next year. There's 50 rounds, and they have 3 farm league teams and some.
And then
they
there's
get
even more.
recompensated. Yeah, they get recompensated too for if they lose their pick.
No, and then Ricky, I understand what you're going with the whole. I'm going back to college. Screw this. I'm going to be a first rounder next year. Like, there's way too much downside for the NBA teams. You screw organizations that way, because then you could have a first rounder go, I don't like this fucking team. You could have Ben Simmons go, fuck you, Philly.
I just think of like Kobe to Charlotte, or even in the NFL, Elway to, what was it, the Bucks?
No,
they were
to Colts.
The Colts, they were the pick, and it was
Steve Young was the Bucks.
I feel like that. You know what? It's for me. The bases. It's not the only thing, like you said, Sean. But I think that the big thing for me is there has to be either you can't get in until you're 20 or you can't get in until you're 2 years out of high school. However you want to word it.
My thing is more of like that's why I kind of brought up who's paying them, the NCAA or NBA. It's either I think you either start paying these kids to play in college, because obviously they're gonna stay in college more if they're getting a consistent paycheck, because some guys like Emmanuel Mudiay is like, well, I'm not getting paid to play in college, I'm gonna go overseas and get paid and then go to the NBA. The thing with a guy like Deontay Davis, it's maybe he likes that paycheck, but then maybe it's tough to say, because then if he goes back to college, is the NBA team still going to play him, or is he going to basically be playing for free in a college education? I mean, it's tough
there's
to
definitely
see.
some issues there, and that's why my thought is compromise. I'm all for the 2 years removed from high school. That is the line in the sand. If you go to college, though, you have to go your freshman and sophomore year. The big question there is, okay, if you're forcing them, either you do that or you do 2 years abroad. Mm-hmm. If you go abroad, obviously you'll get a higher paycheck, but you're also going into like some weird situations where maybe at age 18, am I comfortable in China? Like Emmanuel Mudiay, that was a hard decision for him to make.
He had to relearn the language.
He had to figure out
an entirely new language.
Yeah,
I should say.
and he's playing against guys who are in their 30s too. I mean, that's a weird culture shock.
And people are also going to question, well, is he playing against the top of the top? I mean, if he's going to college, then because that was kind of my knock on a guy like Thon Maker or like a guy on Dragon Bender is Chris is doing this in NCAA, where Bender's doing this overseas.
And then the other concern is, okay, well, from the NCAA point of view, I think it's a mix, because on the one end, you get to market these players for another year. You can sell those jerseys. You can build up these teams. And we can start to see a little bit more, not going all the way back to like the 80s where guys used to stick for 3 years plus. But you're going to see some more dynasty-style teams instead of these. I'm going to recycle one-and-dones for the next decade and just be a top team, because if I land the top prospect
I mean, even we're starting to see, basically since Anthony Davis came out.
I was just going to say,
the whole thing with Kentucky was, we're going to get one-and-dones and be in it. Well, Kentucky hasn't been a team that everyone's like, oh, yeah, they're going to win it this year, because we're seeing that even like Scal's a perfect example because he was on that Kentucky team where we're seeing examples of some of these kids just aren't. I get it. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, you can even maybe throw Ben Simmons in there. Yep. They're the exceptions to this, and I mean, they're going to be handicapped by this and have to wait. But I think overall, it's going to be better for the mass majority of athletes coming in, and it's going to be better for the product that we see on the floor and making the league stronger.
Right. I was just kind of thinking, you're talking about dynasties. I'm pretty sure if John Wall had to stay, wouldn't he be with Anthony Davis the next year? So I mean, you're getting it would be Boogie, Anthony Davis, and John Wall.
Yeah, like, the product in NCAA would go through the roof.
It would be ridiculous.
It would absolutely be fantastic.
And
but
one guy I quickly want to throw out there is, we talked about Deontay Davis falling, right? He was a guy that the highest had him going to the Bulls at 14. The other side of that, Grayson Allen. The highest someone had him was, I believe, Chad Ford, and then you had him going to the Clippers.
Yeah, 25.
In one of your, I think it was your second mock draft. He's a guy that, would he have fallen? Because he said, "Fuck it, I'll go back."
Yeah, he would have been a mid-second rounder, I think.
What?
Grayson Allen.
If he would have stayed in the draft, because he went back to Duke.
I don't know.
Would he have fallen out of the first round? Much like Deontay Davis?
I think it would kind of depend more on his actual. Because I mean, a team like the Clippers, they picked Bryce Johnson, a guy who is ready to play. If Grayson Allen impressed I think it would be more how would he do with the combine, and how would he do with interviews.
Bryce Johnson had a few more games than Grayson Allen in that
but
tournament to show off.
I'm just saying more of how would he do it? How would he do in the combine? How would he impress with interviews and stuff like that? I don't even know if Grayson Allen's going to be a first round draft pick next year.
I think he will be. I think he's going to grow quite a bit. Actually, I was high on Grayson Allen's upside. Obviously, he wasn't ready to be a first rounder this year. Fair enough. But the problem. Okay, so upside, college gets these guys who are built up, and you establish universities as powerhouses again, and then the NBA gets these ready-made products that are already established, they're already known by the entire country, and you come in and you get to see guys a little more. You don't have to make these rash judgments off of watching someone play for 50 games and be like, oh yeah, he totally showed everything we needed to do right there. This is our guy going forward. So it's a win-win on that level. But then it comes back to, all right, well, you have to do something for these college kids. We're now risking them for another year of injuries, and they're the downside of losing millions and millions of dollars because you forced me to stay in college one more year and I blew out my knee.
But
I'm undrafted.
I was going to bring that up.
I'm going to throw out a devil's advocate to that.
Okay.
Though. is it possible for them? Because I know there's some players that if I'm going to go back and have to go, can they get insurance? Like, there's people that have gotten insurance on their body.
That's become more normal, but it's still not. Look, you can insure your knee for $1 million, but look, if you get an NBA contract, your first contract is a first rounder. You're going to walk away with a handful.
But still, I'm saying like that could be an option to more players just put like insurance on their body.
Yeah, but it's so sketchy. And
I'm not saying it's the answer. I'm just throwing out there as an option.
So if you come up with a stipend, and the big problem with that is if you force the colleges to play their athletes, then you have to force them to pay all their athletes. We're talking about
there's a
football,
basketball,
baseball,
baseball, and
swimming,
volleyball,
women's field hockey, rugby, like all these different sports where look. The moneymakers in college are very clear to each college. You go to Texas, you're playing football. That's what makes them hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. Like that's what has built that franchise, or that I want to say franchise, but university up and funded them. So look, if it's stipends, it may need to come from the league. I think that's a better answer. I think that way it's fair. The NBA is going to get a better product. They're going to give you a chunk of cash to colleges. I don't know how it's going to go. It's got to be a pool and a split for D1. That's a fair answer from my point of view.
See, but then it might be, all right, well, our team's going to be providing this stipend, or is it going to be straight from the NBA? Like, is it going to be built into the salary cap, or will this be built from kind of like a luxury tax thing where you can pay for it?
It's a team. It's every team is it's just got to be a flat fee or something.
What about if I throw this out there, and this is kind of what happened, I want to say it was a month ago. UCLA signs a huge deal with Under Armour. Their top quarterback, Josh Rosen, comes out and goes, "Oh yeah, but we're still student athletes. Like,
right?
Maybe like some of that money can be. I'm not saying all of it, but like there are places for these universities to use for this money.
Yeah, there is. But
it's just them being greedy.
I think,
let's be honest.
Also, if you look at the tuition rates, I mean, tuition goes up.
It's been going through the roof. Teams. No, the tuition goes up for no fucking reason at this point. This is ridiculous. Teachers are still paid poorly in universities.
It's also to fund like these sporting.
Oh yeah,
these sporting,
yeah.
I mean, these sports teams.
Spot on.
So it's ridiculous. Let's kind of get off this.
Sorry.
What's your final?
I feel like I solved college.
I love this
Fuck college.
I feel like I've solved this problem.
You know what, Dave? You can talk one and done on the Primetime podcast anytime.
Wonderful.
Join me and Brandon.
Real quick. Well, final thoughts. What should the NBA do?
First thing they got to do is say 20 years old. That's the limit for the draft.
2 year removed. I don't care how old you are. 2 years removed.
I think I'm in agreement with you. I still want to throw out
shocker. We agree.
But I mean, we have seen. But even Devin Booker at 18, he I think outperformed a lot of our expectations.
Oh, am I not saying there's exceptions? There are, but like LeBron the mass
James.
Majority.
But this way, we should see less busts too. Teams should be happier because look. We don't have to get our hopes up and be like, yeah, he had 4 great games. I really got a good feeling about this guy.
Yeah.
Come on.
See, it's tough for me really what to say. It's tough to. I mean, my ultimate idea would be like, all right, you can go back. But look,
if we're snapshotting a single comment from Deontay Davis and saying that's his personality, we have a dire problem as far as our evaluation process. Yeah. I think that seriously, you kind of need to step back and be like, all right, this is a little too much.